A waitress had been unjustly fired for serving a hungry elderly man. A week later, she received a phone call that left her speechless. As I stirred the ingredients in the pot slowly, I could feel the warmth from the stove. The aroma of the stew filled the small kitchen in Monterey. I turned to face my mother, Casey, who was peeling potatoes at the table. "Mom, did you talk to Dad today? How's he feeling?" I spoke with genuine concern. She looked at me, her tired eyes reflecting the weight of the days. "He's asleep, Olivia. The doctor said this new medication might help, but the days are so long, and it's tough on him. Your father has always been such a strong man. It's hard to see him like this." Her voice was a mix of sadness and resignation. I lowered the heat on the stove and took a moment to absorb her words. "I'm really sorry, Mom. I wish I could do more. I've been looking for work for months, but if I find something, I could save a little and at least try the latest treatments. They say this one is effective for Parkinson's." I turned back to my mother with a determined look, though my eyes betrayed my frustration. She set down the potatoes and took my hand. "Olivia, you're already doing so much. Don't blame yourself. Life is sometimes unfair. Your father has always been a good man, helping so many people in this town. He was always the first to lend a hand. Now, this illness is taking away everything he loved." She sighed and clasped her hands together. "I just wish things were different." I whispered almost to myself. "Dad has always been my hero. He taught me so much about life and being strong. And now, seeing him like this," I shook my head, unable to continue. She wrapped me in a strong embrace. "He's still the same man, Olivia, and he's so proud of you. When you were little, he used to say, 'She'll make a difference in the world.' And look at you now, even in these tough times, you're here fighting with us. That's something many 25-year-olds wouldn't do." I looked at my mother's eyes as I pulled slightly away. "I just want him to know that I would do anything for him, for us. I feel so powerless. I pray every night for a miracle, for even a small chance to improve our situation." Tears welled up at the corners of my eyes. "God hears your prayers, Olivia. And even though it seems dark now, there is always light. You are our light, Olivia. Your strength and determination have been a greater help than you can imagine." She wiped the tears from my face. "And don't worry too much about finding a job. You're already helping so much at home, whereas other young people are worrying about parties and social events." I sighed deeply and gazed at the stew simmering in the pot. "Mom, that doesn't matter right now. What matters is Dad's health. I want to improve his quality of life, even just a little. It's unbelievable how much he's weakened with Parkinson's disease." Everything changed so suddenly. I saw her nod, sharing the same feeling of helplessness. "It's terrifying," Mom said. "The doctor talked about the possibility of nerve damage, and that's what worries me most. We can help him walk and hold things, but the thought of him losing his personality or memories, that's unbearable." Leaning against the counter, I tried to mask my resolve with a mix of sadness. "Yes, Mom, that's what worries me too. Dad was always so full of life, so wise and talkative. Losing all that, losing who he is, that's the hardest part." She offered a faint smile, trying to lighten the conversation. "You know, Olivia, your dad is still strong and positive. He's overcome so much, always cracking jokes. He used to say, 'One day, someone will see your crafts and say, this isn't just craft, this is art. And then it'll start selling everywhere, with celebrities wanting my vases.' It might be a dream, but it's not about my art being recognized, it's about giving you a little freedom. Freedom to just live." Maybe even meet a good man and get married. I managed to smile, though my eyes still reflected the sorrow I felt. Mom, marriage is the last thing on my mind right now. There are more important things, like meeting someone. As for the crafts, Dad's right, they are art. I'm so proud of your efforts. She placed a hand on my shoulder, her gaze steady and sincere. Olivia, I've always hoped my crafts would make a difference. Not just economically, but also bring joy to those who buy them. You and your father have always been my inspiration. I wished things were different. I just wish Dad could get the treatment he deserves and recover, I said, my voice trembling, struggling to hold back tears. I feel the same way, she replied. But we must do what we can and stay strong for him. I don't want to see you suffer anymore. I looked at my mother, her eyes filled with worry and hope. Mom, how are the craft sales going? I asked, my voice betraying my anxious hope for some good news amid our troubles. Mom gazed off, her voice thick with emotion. Not well, Olivia, she said. It feels like the value of my lovingly made crafts is being overlooked. I tried changing the selling methods and locations, but people just pass by as if I'm invisible, or worse, they see me as less than human because I sell on the street. They don't see what I do as art. Her words carried a deep sadness and a pain that went beyond financial struggles, touching on her very essence as a person. Seeing my mother so despondent made my chest tighten with empathy. I'm so sorry, Mom. You don't deserve to be treated like this. I promise I'll work hard to get you a wonderful shop someday, one with air conditioning, where your crafts will be truly valued as art. My words were a promise to my mother and a commitment to fighting for a better future for us both. She smiled through her tears, her pain evident but her hope shining through. Thank you. Your words mean so much to me. But right now, the most important thing is that the three of us face everything together, as a family. I wiped my tears, trying to shift the mood. Dinner is almost ready. Could you call Dad? It was time to focus on the little things that held our family together, the everyday gestures of care. She nodded, wiping her own tears, and went off to find Dad. A little later, he walked into the kitchen. Each step was a challenge, and the trembling of his hands was a constant reminder of the illness he was facing. Dad, how are you? I asked, my eyes full of love and concern. Ah. He began to speak, struggling to smile. The situation isn't easy. The new medication doesn't seem to be working well, but I have faith in God and in my family. The important thing is that we are together. As long as you two are here, nothing can completely bring me down. You are like flowers to me, my light. His words were filled with love and hope despite the circumstances. Yes, Dad, it comforts me to see you so strong. I believe God will help us. For a moment, I managed a smile that seemed to momentarily lift the weight of our troubles. As the dawn of a new day arrived, I continued my unchanging routine, searching for work. These past few months of job hunting had turned into a path of despair and frustration. Walking through the streets, my heart echoed with silent prayers. I need a job, not just to earn money, but to help the family. Dad can't work anymore. God, please help us. You know how desperately we need work. My words were a mix of prayer and a cry from the heart, reflecting the overwhelming despair that consumed me. Passing by a cafe, I noticed a sign that read, "Waitress Wanted." It wasn't on my list of places, but driven by a flicker of hope still burning within me, I decided to go in. The place had a fresh, modern, and elegant atmosphere. I approached the front desk. A young woman with a manager's badge attended to me. Hello. Could you tell me how to apply for the job posting? I asked, trying to keep my confidence intact. The young woman looked me up and down, her tone dripping with disdain. Oh, sorry, but there are no openings for cleaning positions. I felt a mix of confusion and anger. It was clear she was judging me by my modest appearance. I'm not looking for a cleaning position, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. I saw the sign for a waitress. I have experience and am very efficient. The young manager, Megan, looked surprised. Oh, I see. Let me check if the owner is available to speak with you. Please wait outside so as not to scare the customers. I'll call you in. Though I was hurt by the treatment, I kept my calm. Got it. I understand. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I apologize for my simple attire today, I had several interviews lined up. Megan's response was curt, oh, I see, as she went off to find the cafe owner. While waiting outside, I tried to keep my hope alive. Life had taught me to be strong and face prejudice and hardship head-on. Every effort is worth it, I thought. For the family, for Dad. I knew that despite the obstacles, my strength and determination would be my greatest allies on this journey. Megan soon returned, her forced smile barely masking her haste. Well, you're lucky today, young lady. The boss is available for an interview now. We really need a waitress. I hope you can handle table service. Though Megan's condescending attitude was unsettling, I couldn't afford to let it shake my confidence. Entering Mr. Frank's office, I felt my heartbeat quicken. He sized me up and said, just as my daughter mentioned. Your name is Olivia, correct? You're fortunate. The waitress we had on trial is pregnant, so we had to let her go immediately. We want to avoid future issues. So if you're pregnant, you should let me know now. The question was shocking, but I responded firmly. No, I'm not pregnant. I desperately need this job. I'm a hard worker with experience as a waitress. I learn quickly and am not afraid of the work. He nodded. Excellent, excellent. To be honest, Olivia, the starting pay isn't very high. After the probation period, if you show promise, we might offer a slightly better salary. Also, let me be upfront about the appearance. Especially in a high-end cafe like ours, good grooming is essential. You're beautiful but quite plain. Being poor isn't a problem, but we like to give chances to those who really want to work. Since you'll be dealing with upscale customers, you'll need to tidy up your hair and wear better clothes. Even while wearing an apron. I was a bit hurt by his words, but maintained my composure. That's fine. I completely understand. I apologize for today's attire. I'll do my best to present myself appropriately for the job. He seemed satisfied with my response and nodded. Great. Please come in early tomorrow. I'm giving you this chance, so make the most of it. You're not the usual profile we seek. As I left the office, I felt a mix of emotions. The interview had been a challenge filled with judgments and expectations. But I knew it was a chance to make a difference for my family. I'll prove them wrong, I thought. To be more than they expect. Walking home, I began planning how to improve my appearance with my limited resources. I knew I could adapt to any situation, and this one would be no exception. I vow to prove I can be a great waitress, no matter where I come from or what I'm wearing, I promised myself. Arriving home, I was bursting with a mix of joy and anxiety, eager to share the news with my parents. Mom, Dad. I called out, but the house was eerily quiet. A wave of anxiety began to swell inside me. I wasn't sure if Dad had any medical appointments or issues. Dad was frail and usually needed assistance, and Mom almost never left without informing someone. I decided to call Mom, but before I could find my phone, it rang. It was from her, but her voice was trembling with desperation. "Olivia, it's all my fault. There's a tragedy." My heart raced. "Mom, what happened? Is it Dad?" I asked, dreading the worst. She then explained through her tears, "Yes, I was making crafts and forgot to help your dad with his bath. He said he could go by himself, but he fell." "Olivia." "He fell in the bathroom and is now in the hospital. He fractured his hip." I felt a surge of shock and sadness, but I fought to remain calm. "Mom, please calm down. It's not your fault. Accidents happen. How is Dad now?" She sobbed, "They're taking care of him. I should have been there. It's my fault." "No, Mom, you can't think like that. I'm heading to the hospital now." As I tried to comfort my mother, I also struggled to keep my own composure. I grabbed my keys and rushed out. Torn by worry and fear for my father, I headed toward the hospital. On the way, I tried to prepare myself for whatever I might face. He had always been my hero, strong and invincible. Seeing him weak was unbearable. I recalled the moments of joy and challenge we had shared when he had encouraged me. Now is the time to be strong for him. Feeling my heartbeat quicken, I raced down the hospital hallway. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air as I spotted Mom, sitting in the waiting room with trembling hands. As I approached, we embraced tightly. The hug was a shared moment of fear and hope. "Mom, are you okay? How is Dad?" I asked, my voice thick with tears and concern. Trying to stop her crying, she said, "Olivia, he's still in surgery. He suffered a severe fall and fractured his hip. The doctors are concerned about the risk of bleeding, so the situation is delicate, but they're doing everything they can." Hearing my mother's words, I felt a deep ache in my chest. I took her trembling hand, trying to offer whatever strength I could. "Mom, don't forget how strong Dad is. He's overcome so much already. Let's keep our faith." I spoke while hiding my own anxiety. She looked at me through her tears. "I should have been by his side, Olivia. I got caught up in my crafts and didn't help him. That's why this happened." Noticing the guilt consuming my mother, I gripped her hand tightly. "Mom, please don't blame yourself. Accidents happen. We can't predict everything. What matters now is that we're here for Dad, that he's not alone." Still shaken, she slowly nodded. "But, Olivia, everything is going to change. He will need more care and support now. How are we going to manage this?" Her voice was filled with clear concern. Taking a deep breath, I summoned the courage to share some news to give my mother some reassurance. "Mom, listen. Before today's events, I found a job. I've been hired on a trial basis at a Café Bloom. It might not seem like much, but if I do well, they promise to review my pay. This will help with our finances." I tried to bring a glimmer of hope. She looked at me with surprise, and a hint of relief appeared in her eyes. "You found a job? Oh, that's wonderful." I gave a faint smile. "The cafe has a good reputation, so there will probably be considerable amount of tips. That might help with the extra expenses." Still emotional, she hugged me with a bit of pride. "You've always been so responsible and dedicated. Your father would be very proud of you. And for him, we'll find a way. I'll reduce the time I spend selling crafts in town to be with him more. With your new job, we'll manage." We held each other for a while, finding comfort in each other's presence. I looked into my mother's eyes and said, "We've faced difficult times before, Mom. Each time, we've come out stronger. We'll face this together, just like we always have. Dad, you, and I, we're a team. We'll get through this too. Just watch." The first few weeks at Café Bloom were a whirlwind of new experiences and challenges. Learning the menu details, adjusting to the cafe's busy rhythm, and adapting to a new routine left me exhausted but determined. One day, I tried to build a rapport with Megan, the owner's daughter who also worked as a manager, and approached her with a smile. "Megan, these past few weeks have been so busy. But I'm glad to hear that the customers like my service. I even managed to use the tips to cover my father's medication. Did I mention he fractured his hip? But he's recovering at home now." Megan looked at me with cold, disdainful eyes and dismissed me with, "I'm not interested in your mundane personal life. And don't forget, Olivia, you're not here to make friends or chat. You're here to work. And as for the customers, tips are optional. You're already getting paid, so I don't want to see you pushing for extra." I felt a tight knot in my chest at Megan's words. I had always believed that being kind and attentive was at the heart of good service, naturally leading to tips. But that wasn't my main motivation. Feeling dismissed, I replied, "Sorry, Megan. I thought since we see each other every day and work together, we could become friends. I would never ask for tips from customers. Being kind is just who I am, and I thought it would benefit the cafe too." Megan turned her gaze, her tone condescending. "Friends? Olivia, we're on different levels here. I'm the manager, and you're my subordinate. That places us on different rungs of the ladder. So remember your place and focus on your work. Friends? That's for another life." Disheartened by Megan's response, I returned to my duties, serving customers with the same care, though my heart felt heavier. I pondered the difficulty of navigating relationships at work, especially when invisible yet palpable barriers were in place due to differences in status. As I prepared cappuccinos, my thoughts drifted to the recent upheavals in my life. My inner dialogue unfolded. I can't believe how everything has changed so suddenly. I watched the steam rising from the cappuccino machine. Dad's health, this new job, it feels like I'm on an unstoppable roller coaster. But I can't let that affect me. I have to stay strong, for myself and for them. Today was full of challenges and small victories. I'm exhausted, but there's satisfaction in knowing I'm doing all I can. Yes, I knew things would be tough, but I believe I have the strength and courage to face these challenges. Placing the cappuccino on the counter, I let out a deep sigh, a mix of fatigue and determination. Tomorrow is a new day. I'll stand here with a strong will. No matter how difficult it gets, I'll face it one day at a time. I won't let anyone who looks down on me for having money or expensive clothes diminish my worth. That night, after returning from work, I entered my parents' room. The room now seemed burdened with worry and unforeseen changes. Signs of recent shifts were evident: medical equipment by the bedside, a folded wheelchair in the corner, and several bottles of medication lined up on the nightstand. My father was lying in bed, his face etched with fatigue, revealing pain and helplessness. "How are you feeling today, Dad?" I approached his bedside with an optimistic tone, taking a seat in the chair next to him. He slowly turned to face me, his eyes lighting up just a bit. "Olivia, it's tough. You know that, right? Being confined to this bed, unable to get up on my own, it feels like the painkillers aren't enough sometimes. But I've been talking to God a lot, seeking strength and faith to face this." I took my father's hand. It was a physical connection that had always brought us comfort. "I understand, Dad. But you're a strong person. You've overcome so much before. We're here, supporting every step of your recovery." "Thank you. But there's something I'm more worried about." He let out a heavy sigh. "It's your mother. She's blaming herself so much. It's unbearable to see her like that. Tell her it's not anyone's fault." Especially knowing how Parkinson's can limit itself, I should have been more careful. Not being able to do even the simplest things is humiliating, Olivia. I gripped my father's hand tightly, feeling the sincerity and pain in his words. Dad, accidents happen. You and Mom shouldn't blame yourselves. I'll talk to her and help her understand. What's most important now is that you focus on your recovery. We'll handle everything else. Dad looked at me, his gaze reflecting the weariness etched into my eyes. It was an indelible mark of long and harsh days. How's work, Olivia? You look so tired. How are things with the customers and your boss? I settled back into the chair beside his bed, ready to share the details of my day. I generally like my job. I've always enjoyed interacting with customers. My boss is a bit arrogant, but he's hardly ever in the store. The real issue is Megan, his daughter, and the manager. She's always watching and trying to look down on me. I took a deep breath before continuing. She always makes comments about me being poor or criticizes my clothes. You know, Dad, she's never satisfied with anything. No matter what I do, even if the customers are happy, she always finds something to complain about. Despite his pain and discomfort, he kept his gaze steady on me. Don't let that affect you, Olivia. You're beautiful and capable. That young woman might be projecting something onto you. Maybe it's jealousy over your strong will, your kindness, and your courage to live with pride despite not having everything at hand. I gave a soft laugh. That sound was a rare thing amidst the heavy worries. Dad, you always give such great advice. And you're funny, too. I held his hand, feeling the connection and love we had always shared. Thank you for being such a special father. Your words always give me strength. That's my role, Olivia. I'm always here to support you, to make you smile. Even in these tough times, don't forget who you are and what you can do. It doesn't matter what others say or think. He gripped my hand firmly, conveying his love and trust. I returned to work as usual, tending to my customers with the same care and attention I always gave. Everything was going smoothly until something unexpected happened. One customer took a sip of his coffee, and before I knew it, he spat it out and started yelling. Are you out of your mind? What did you put in this coffee? Is this some kind of sick joke? Call your manager, now. I was startled, completely thrown off, but I tried to stay calm. Sir, what seems to be the problem? I didn't notice anything wrong with the coffee. Can you tell me what's going on? His face was red with frustration. Nothing wrong? I ought to throw this coffee right in your face. This thing's got salt in it. I asked for no sugar, but that doesn't mean I want salt. What's wrong with you? I immediately apologized, telling him I'd call the manager and prepare a fresh coffee. But when I glanced at Megan, there was a slight smirk on her face. That's when it hit me. She did it. Megan was behind this. She walked over to the table, pretending to sympathize, her voice dripping with false concern. I'm so sorry about this, sir. Our waitress here can be a little careless sometimes. I'll make you a fresh coffee on the house. By the end of my shift, Frank had called me into his office. He was strict, direct, and didn't waste time. I got a report from Megan. This kind of mistake is unacceptable. Our customers are our top priority. And the coffee Megan had to remake will be deducted from your paycheck. My stomach dropped. I felt a deep sense of unfairness, but also fear. I knew I wasn't to blame, but I couldn't afford to lose my job. With a shaky voice, I apologized. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful. The whole thing shook me up. I knew Megan was behind it, but I had no proof. I felt helpless. The tension between us was palpable, but I reminded myself how important this job was for my family. So, I kept my head down and carried on. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to take out the trash, trying to shake off the day's frustration. That's when I saw him. An elderly man, sitting near the dumpster, his clothes dirty, his face tired. I stood there for a moment, just looking at him. It's heartbreaking to see someone so alone, so powerless, at his age. And then I thought about my own parents. What if this were them? Old, with no one around, not even the basic necessities? The thought pierced through me. Life is so unpredictable, isn't it? One day everything's fine, and the next, it can all come crashing down. The man looked up at me with lost, weary eyes. I'm hungry, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. I don't even know where I am. But I'm so hungry. His words hit me right in the chest, tightening my heart in a way I wasn't expecting. I knew in my heart that I couldn't ignore the suffering of others, especially when it came to hunger. There was something about that kind of need that struck a chord deep within me. So, I responded gently to the man sitting near the dumpster. Please wait here for a moment. I'm not the owner of this cafe, but I'll do what I can to help you. Every day, I saw unsold bread being thrown away, perfectly good bread from the morning that just wouldn't sell the next day. I quickly gathered a few pieces, put them in a container, and grabbed a bottle of water. As I handed the food to the man, he took my hand, his eyes welling up with tears. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. I smiled, feeling a quiet joy in being able to help him, and turned back toward the cafe. But as I approached the door, I saw Megan watching me with a cold, sharp look on her face. I saw what you did, she said, her voice laced with accusation. Don't act like some kind-hearted saint. If you want to run a charity, open your own cafe and give food away. But here, you don't get to take what we sell and hand it out to beggars. I started to explain that the bread would have been thrown away, but Megan cut me off. I'm telling Frank, she said, her tone dripping with satisfaction. Get ready to go back to being unemployed. It's probably where you belong. She spun on her heel and left me standing there, stunned. I was overwhelmed with worry. Had my attempt to do something good really led to this? Minutes later, Frank stormed out of his office, his anger palpable. Olivia, what do you think you're doing? This is a cafe, not a charity. First, the salt in the coffee incident, and now this? Are you trying to ruin my business? I was shocked, unable to find the words to defend myself at first. How had an ordinary afternoon turned into this nightmare? Please, Frank, I finally managed to say, tears starting to spill over. Let me explain. I wasn't trying to harm your business. The bread was just going to be thrown out, and the man was starving. I only wanted to help. I meant every word, but I could see the weight of judgment in his eyes. Frank wasn't budging. That's no excuse, Olivia. You can't just hand out my business's food to anyone on the street. It sets a dangerous precedent. And what about the coffee? How can I trust someone who made that mistake? He was referring to the coffee incident earlier, where a customer had accused me of putting salt in his drink. Megan had already warned him about me, and now it seemed she was right in his eyes. Frustration and a deep sense of injustice surged within me. But Frank, I pleaded, I didn't put salt in that coffee. I would never do that. I respect this job, and I respect the customers. And the bread. I just wanted to. Before I could finish, Frank interrupted me. Olivia, you've been naive, he said firmly. This is a business, not a charity. I know Megan has been hard on you, but she understands what it takes to keep this place running. Unfortunately, I can't overlook any more mistakes. You're fired. The cost of the bread will come out of your final paycheck. I felt a wave of despair wash over me, but I wasn't ready to give up. Frank, please, I pleaded, my voice echoing in the empty cafe. I really need this job. I'll be more careful. Please don't fire me. I'll pay for the bread, but losing this job. My voice broke with a mix of desperation and fear. I could see Megan standing off to the side, watching me with a mixture of contempt and triumph in her eyes. Just as I was at my most vulnerable, she decided to step in. She walked over slowly, her eyes glinting with a cruel satisfaction. I could hear her voice, cold and deliberate, as she spoke just loud enough for me to hear. You heard him, Olivia. You're fired. Begging and crying won't help you now. We're not here to run a charity. We're here to make a profit. Honestly, you were never fit for this place. I knew it from the start. She paused for a moment, looking me up and down, as if weighing my very existence. Perhaps it's time for you to return to wherever you belong, she continued, her tone dripping with superiority. You never understood the standards we uphold here, and frankly, I don't think you ever will. Megan circled around me slowly, her words like knives, cutting through any hope I might have had left. This world isn't some fairy tale where everyone helps each other. The strong survive, and the weak get left behind. And unfortunately, you've proven you're not strong enough to stay here. She stopped, looking me straight in the eyes, her smile cold and calculated. So please, for all of our sake, just disappear. Go back to whatever poor neighborhood you crawled out of, and try your luck at some little cafe where mistakes don't cost so much. Here, there's no room for error, and certainly no room for cheap sentimentality. Her words hung in the air, heavy with disdain. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, completely stunned, feeling as if every last shred of hope and dignity had been crushed. With the weight of defeat pressing down on me, I left the cafe. As I walked through the streets, my mind was racing. What now? I asked myself in that internal conversation I so often had when things felt impossible. Mom's already overwhelmed caring for Dad. She hardly has time for her crafts anymore. How am I going to survive? Tears began to blur my vision as they spilled down my cheeks. I closed my eyes for a moment, seeking solace in the only place I knew I could find it. God, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I'm lost. It feels so dark around me. Please help me. Give me the strength to face this challenge. I don't know what to do. I feel so alone, so powerless. My voice was quiet, but my faith was still there, holding on by a thread. As I prayed, my thoughts were interrupted. The elderly man I had given food to earlier was stumbling into the street, right into the path of an oncoming car. For a split second, I hesitated. Was he drunk? But before I could think too long, my instinct to help kicked in. I remember rushing towards him, my heart pounding as I grabbed the man's arm, pulling him out of the street just in time. Are you all right? Have you been drinking? I asked, my voice filled with concern. He looked at me, his eyes clouded, no sign of recognition. No. I haven't been drinking, he said, his voice shaky, almost lost. My son always told me not to drink with my medication. Can you tell me where I am? The confusion in his words was palpable, like someone trying to grasp at memories slipping through their fingers. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of sympathy for him. I quickly decided to take him to the shelter for the homeless, figuring it was the best option at the time. When we arrived, I explained the situation to the woman at the front desk. I found this man earlier, I told her. He seemed hungry and lost. He nearly got hit by a car, and I'm worried about him. He seems disoriented. The woman, middle-aged and tired-looking, yet with kind eyes, listened patiently. "Our shelter is full," she said, sighing softly, "but I'll try to make room for him tonight, just for one night." I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for her understanding. Before leaving, I handed her my phone number. "If you can't find a place for him, please call me. I don't want to leave him out there alone." She nodded, a silent gesture of gratitude. As I left the shelter, I felt a small sense of peace, despite everything I had lost. Losing my job had been devastating, but at least, in that moment, I had made a small difference in someone's life. The next day, after another disappointing job interview, I found myself walking home, pondering where I would search for work next. Suddenly, my phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I stared at the screen for a moment, a number I didn't recognize flashing across it. A surge of hope mixed with anxiety washed over me. "Hello, who's calling?" I asked, trying to keep the tension out of my voice. "Is this Olivia?" The voice on the other end was calm, yet there was an urgency behind it. "My name is Andrew Williams. I'm sorry to bother you, but this is a very important matter." I stopped in my tracks, a mixture of confusion and unease settling over me. "What can I help you with?" I asked, feeling my heart start to race. "A few weeks ago, you helped an elderly man who was lost in the streets," he explained. "That man is my father. He's not homeless, though. He's been suffering from advanced Alzheimer's. He escaped from our home and had been missing for weeks. We searched everywhere but couldn't find him. We only recently learned from the shelter that you took him there, gave him food, and saved him from being hit by a car." There was a pause, and I could hear the emotion thickening in Andrew's voice. "Because of your kindness, we found him. Honestly, we thought he was gone." For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. I remembered the frail man, the lost look in his eyes. I had no idea the magnitude of that small act. It was one of those moments that makes you question how life takes such unexpected turns. "You saved his life," Andrew said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We were starting to lose hope, but thanks to you, we have him back. We would love to invite you to dinner, so we can thank you in person." I was stunned, unsure of how to respond. Dinner with his family? It felt overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," I managed to say. "I was just doing what anyone would do." But Andrew insisted, his sincerity unmistakable. "Please, Olivia, it would mean the world to us. You've done more than you realize." I hesitated but eventually agreed. The warmth in his voice, the thought of meeting the man I had saved again, it was hard to say no. The next evening, when I looked out the window, I saw a sleek black car waiting for me. My heart raced with a mix of anticipation and nerves. My mother, ever the romantic, gave me one last piece of advice. "Enjoy yourself, sweetheart. You deserve this. Who knows, you might even meet your future husband tonight," she teased. I laughed it off, but a small part of me wondered if she might be right. The driver, dressed in a sharp blue uniform, greeted me with the utmost respect. "Ms. Olivia, Mr. Ferrari is waiting for you." The car pulled up to a grand estate, far more extravagant than I had imagined. The manicured gardens, the elegant facade, it took my breath away. I thought to myself, is this really his home? How is this possible? The reality of it all was overwhelming. Andrew greeted me at the door, a tall, handsome man in his early 30s, with a warm, welcoming smile. "Olivia, it's such an honor to have you here," he said, extending his arms. "May I give you a hug? You truly saved my father's life." Still processing everything, I nodded and accepted the embrace. There was a subtle, refined scent about him, one that spoke of elegance and care. He led me to a large dining table, where his father sat, looking much different than when I had last seen him. Dressed in a sharp black suit, with a nurse by his side, he seemed calmer, more collected. Andrew turned to his father and said softly, "Dad, do you remember Olivia? She's the one who saved you. Thanks to her, you're safe here with us." It was in that moment, seeing the gratitude in their eyes, that I realized the impact of my actions. I had made a difference in someone's life, and it was a feeling I would carry with me for a long time. I sat there, watching him as he looked at me with a gentle smile and nodded slightly. It was such a simple gesture, but it held so much weight in that moment. Andrew continued speaking, his voice soft but filled with emotion. He looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Olivia, this is my family. You may not fully realize it, but you saved someone incredibly precious to me." I had a feeling this was going to be serious, and I braced myself as he went on. He shared that he had recently lost his mother to heart disease, and I could see the pain in his eyes as he spoke. His father, he said, was everything to him now. I had helped save his father, and I could feel the depth of his gratitude. As the dinner progressed, I found myself talking about my own family. I wasn't sure why, but something about Andrew's sincerity made me open up. I shared some personal stories, including one about how, despite losing my job and facing humiliation, I had kept my faith that God wouldn't abandon me. It felt a little odd to reveal so much, but at the same time, it felt right. Andrew listened, his face reflecting empathy. He seemed genuinely moved by my experiences. Then, out of nowhere, he mentioned something that made my heart skip a beat. He asked if I had heard of Williams and Associates, the law firm. Of course, I had. It was famous. Then he casually revealed that he was the owner of the firm. My mind raced as he went on to say they represented clients all over the world, and money was never an issue for them. Before I could even process that, he made an offer that left me speechless. Andrew wanted to help pay for my father's Parkinson's treatment and even offered to represent me in suing the cafe that had wronged me. He said he'd make sure they wouldn't stay in business for another week. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure how to respond. I was overwhelmed with gratitude, but also a bit stunned by the enormity of his offer. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully, and told him that I didn't know what to say. His generosity was overwhelming, but I just couldn't accept it, at least not fully. I explained that his invitation to dinner and this evening had already been more than enough. Andrew's eyes softened as he looked at me, and I could tell he truly wanted to help. He insisted, saying that this wasn't just an offer but a heartfelt expression of his gratitude. He wanted to do something for me, something meaningful. He told me that I had done something extraordinary for him, and he just had to give back in some way. I smiled gently, shaking my head. "No, I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything," I told him, though deep down I knew how much this could mean for my father. So, I agreed to accept his help with my father's treatment, and the relief in his face was almost palpable. He raised his hands in a playful victory pose, and I couldn't help but laugh. But then his expression changed, a slight tension crossing his features. He seemed to be searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke again, his voice hesitant. "Olivia, there's something else I'd like to ask, and please, feel free to say no if you find it inappropriate." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Talking to you tonight, I've realized how incredibly smart and charming you are. I'd love to have dinner with you again, just the two of us, not out of gratitude, but simply to get to know you better." I was caught off guard by his invitation, my mind swirling with mixed emotions. I studied him for a moment, trying to gauge his intentions. He seemed sincere, and there was a hopeful glimmer in his eyes. I smiled softly and told him, "Andrew, I didn't expect that." My words came out almost as a whisper, but I meant them. Then, after a brief pause, I added, "But I'd be happy to accept." Tonight has been wonderful, and I'd like to get to know you better too. His face lit up with relief and joy. That's wonderful. I'll plan something special for us. I want it to be a memorable evening for both of us, he said, his excitement barely contained. As the evening wore on, I felt my heart race at the prospect of seeing him again. This night had taken a turn I hadn't anticipated, but I found myself enjoying it more than I thought possible. At the end of the evening, Andrew hugged me, his arms warm and comforting. He looked into my eyes and smiled as he said, "Olivia, we've both become heroes for each other. You saved what matters most to me, and you've brought light into my life." His eyes reflected a sincerity that matched the depth of his words. Andrew leaned in gently, his movements full of tenderness, and kissed me. It wasn't just a kiss of love. It felt like a symbol of the courage and strength we had found together. Looking back, I can see how much that moment meant. It was as if everything we had gone through, the hardships, the uncertainties, were tied into that one simple act.
If you felt something from this story, please show your support by liking and subscribing. Your encouragement helps us continue sharing these touching stories every day. We appreciate your support deeply. And we'll meet again soon.